I knew something was wrong before I even turned off the engine. You spend 43 years on the same piece of land. You start noticing when the air feels off. Maybe that sounds crazy to folks who've never lived outside a city, but out on a ranch, silence has a rhythm to it. And that morning, the rhythm was gone. I remember sitting there in my truck with a gas station coffee between my knees, staring across the south pasture while the sun was just coming up over the mesquite trees. And for a second, I honestly thought I was still half asleep. Because sitting right in the middle of my grazing field was a damn swimming pool. Not one of those little inflatable things either. I'm talking full concrete decking, stainless steel handrails, lounge chairs lined up neat as church pews, blue water shimmering like some resort in Arizona. Somebody had even put up one of those fake palm trees in a planter. On my ranch, on land my grandfather bled for during the drought of and Oppos, 58. I just sat there blinking at it. Now, I'd been gone 5 days down in Fort Worth for a livestock feed convention. Nothing exciting, just a bunch of ranchers arguing about grain prices and pretending our backs don't hurt. Before I left, that pasture looked exactly the way it always had. Rusted fence posts, dry grass, a little pond off toward the cedar line. Peaceful, honest, mine. Then I come home, and suddenly it looks like a suburban country club. At first I honestly wondered if somebody had made a mistake with survey lines. I grabbed the old property map from my glove box, same folded-up copy my dad used to keep under the truck seat, and I walked the fence myself. Every marker matched. Every boundary was right where it had always been, which meant there was only one explanation. Somebody knew exactly what they were doing. That somebody turned out to be the folks over in Briar Ridge Estates. Now, if you've never dealt with an HOA before, count your blessings. Briar Ridge was one of those polished little developments built 5 years back after a Dallas investment company bought up old farmland north of town. Big stone entrance signs, matching mailboxes, golf carts everywhere, people complaining online because somebody's trash can stay out too long. They liked calling the area country living, though most of them had never stepped in manure unless it was by accident. Thing is, me and those people had history already, especially their HOA president, a man named Todd Mercer. Todd was the kind of guy who smiled with all his teeth, but never his eyes. Always wore pressed polos tucked into jeans that had probably never seen dirt in their lives. About a year earlier, he'd come knocking on my door asking if I'd consider selling the south acreage because the neighborhood wanted to expand community amenities. That's the phrase he used. Community amenities. Like my family ranch was some empty lot waiting for a Starbucks. I told him no before he even finished talking. He laughed a little when I said it too, like he thought I was negotiating. Then he offered me a number that honestly insulted me more than if he just called me stupid outright. "You're sitting on prime development land, Hank," he said. "You could retire comfortably." I remember leaning against my porch rail looking at him real calm. "My grandfather's buried on this property," I told him. "I ain't building pickleball courts over him." That smile disappeared for about half a second. After that, things got petty. The HOA started filing noise complaints about my cattle trailers coming through at dawn. Somebody reported the smell from my livestock to the county twice, which every rancher within 50 miles laughed at because, well, cows smell like cows. Then came the letters saying my fencing was an eyesore, visible from the subdivision entrance. One resident even stopped me at the hardware store to complain my rooster woke her children up too early. Lady moved next to a ranch and got mad at chickens. That's the level we were dealing with. Still, I never thought they'd go this far. Standing there that morning, staring at that pool glittering in the sunrise, I noticed something near the gate entrance. A polished stone sign bolted into the concrete. Briar Ridge Aquatic Retreat. Residents only. I actually laughed when I read it. Not because it was funny exactly, more because my brain couldn't process that level of arrogance without trying to turn it into a joke. Then I noticed fresh tire tracks leading through my pasture, construction ruts carved right across the grass my cattle used for grazing, and something inside me shifted hard. Not anger at first. Hurt. Because that land wasn't just dirt to me. My dad taught me to mend fence on that field. I scattered my mother's ashes beneath the oak tree 50 yards from where they poured that concrete. Every inch of that pasture carried somebody's memory, and these people had bulldozed right over it like none of it mattered. I stood there quiet for a long time listening to the pool filter hum. Then I looked over toward my cattle pens, and that's when I got an idea. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend I came up with some master revenge plan right away. Truth is, the first thing I did was call my lawyer. Earl Donahue had been handling ranch disputes in Walker County since before I could grow a beard, and when he answered the phone that morning, I barely got 3 sentences out before he stopped me cold. "Hank," he said, "you telling me they built a whole damn pool on your property?" "Looks like Caesar's Palace out there," I told him. There was silence for about 2 seconds. Then Earl started laughing so hard, he had to put the phone down. But once he caught his breath, his tone changed. "Don't touch a thing yet," he said. "Take pictures. Take video. Get proof of everything before they start changing their story." So that's exactly what I did. I spent the next couple hours walking the property with my drone, filming every inch of it. Fresh concrete, construction equipment tracks, utility lines they dug straight through my pasture. At one point, I even caught the subdivision logo stamped into a pallet of pool tiles still sitting behind the pump house. They weren't hiding it. Hell, they were proud of it. Around noon, Todd Mercer finally showed up. I saw his white Mercedes bouncing down my gravel road from half a mile away. He stepped out wearing loafers that immediately sank into cow dirt, which honestly set the tone for the whole conversation. "Hank," he called out, spreading his arms like we were old buddies. "I was actually meaning to come speak with you." "Funny timing," I said. He glanced toward the pool and gave this little nervous chuckle. "Now I know this looks surprising." "Surprising?" I cut in. "Todd, y'all built SeaWorld in my pasture." He kept trying to smile through it, but I could see sweat forming around his temples. There was some confusion regarding the county survey maps. "No, there wasn't. Hank, you poured 600 square feet of concrete without talking to the landowner." His jaw tightened a little then. Not much, just enough for the real guy underneath to peek through. The development committee was under the impression this parcel was unclaimed utility land. I just stared at him. My cattle have been standing on that utility land since Ronald Reagan was president. For a second, neither of us said anything. Wind blowing through dry grass. Pool water rippling behind him. Then Todd sighed like I was the difficult one. "Look," he said, lowering his voice, "the pool's already finished. Residents paid dues toward this project. Maybe there's a practical solution here." There it was. Not an apology. Not accountability. A transaction. He wanted me to roll over quietly so his neighborhood wouldn't have a scandal. "You got a solution in mind?" I asked. He smiled again, relieved I was finally being reasonable. "The HOA would be willing to compensate you fairly for the acreage." I actually laughed in his face. "You still think this is about money?" "Hank, everything's about money eventually." That sentence right there told me exactly who I was dealing with. See, folks like Todd think ownership only matters if paperwork says so. To them, land is numbers, property value, development opportunity. But out here, land remembers people. It holds weddings, funerals, droughts, storms. My father had his first heart attack fixing fence on that south line. I kissed my ex-wife for the first time leaning against the cattle gate near that exact pasture. You can't slap a dollar amount on memories and expect a man to smile about it. Todd must have noticed something change in my expression because his voice sharpened a little. "Well," he said, "if this becomes a legal issue, the HOA has attorneys too." I nodded slowly. "Good. They can explain trespassing to you." Then I walked away before I said something uglier. That evening I sat on my porch watching the sunset bleed orange across the pasture while my border collie, June, slept beside the rocking chair. And I kept staring at that pool shining in the distance like some giant middle finger planted in my family's land. That's when the idea came back. Not revenge exactly. Balance. You see, the Briar Ridge people wanted the country experience without any actual country in it. They liked the sunsets, the open fields, the rustic charm, but they hated dust, noise, livestock, mud, all the things that make ranch life real. They wanted a cleaned-up version of Texas they could sip wine beside. Well, if they wanted to build something on ranch land, maybe it was time they experienced ranch land. Next morning, I woke up before dawn and drove out to the north pens where my cattle were feeding. 27 head total, mostly Black Angus. All big, healthy animals with absolutely no understanding of private pool etiquette. I backed the trailer up slow while June barked circles around my boots. "You're grinning too much," my ranch hand Miguel said when he walked up carrying feed buckets. "Probably a bad sign," I answered. Now Miguel had worked with me almost 12 years, and when I explained what I planned to do, the man nearly dropped laughing into the dirt. "You serious?" he asked. "Dead serious. Hank, those HOA people gonna lose their minds." I sure hope so. We loaded the cattle by sunrise. And I gotta tell you, driving that trailer toward Briar Ridge Aquatic Retreat felt like heading into battle during the world's dumbest war. Some residents were already out jogging when I rolled up near the pool entrance. One woman froze mid-stretch holding a pink water bottle as 27 cows stared back at her through the trailer rails. I stepped out calmly, opened the gate, and tipped my hat. "Well, boys," I muttered to the herd, "enjoy your amenities." Chaos hit almost instantly. The cows wandered in slow at first, sniffing around the concrete deck. Then one stepped into the shallow end, and suddenly the others followed like kids discovering a water park. Water splashed everywhere. Another started drinking straight from the pool, while two more rubbed against lounge chairs hard enough to flip them over completely. And then came the screaming. "Oh my God, somebody stop them. Call Todd." One little kid actually yelled, "MOM, there's a cow in the hot tub." I'm not proud of this next part, but I laughed so hard I had tears running down my face. Because after weeks, maybe years, of those people treating my ranch like some inconvenience surrounding their perfect little suburb, reality had finally climbed the fence. One particularly large steer wandered over near the decorative waterfall feature and immediately relieved himself all across the concrete deck. A woman in a visor looked like she was about to faint. Miguel leaned beside me watching the disaster unfold. "Think the HOA handbook covers this situation?" "Probably under livestock amenities," I said. Within 30 minutes, the entire pool area looked less like a luxury recreation center and more like auction day at the county fairgrounds. Muddy hoofprints covered the decking. Pool noodles floated beside manure. Somebody's designer beach tote had been trampled flat near the filtration pump. And the best part? Every single hoof standing there was legally on my property. By lunchtime, Todd Mercer came tearing down the gravel road in a golf cart like an angry mall cop, red-faced and sweating through his polo shirt. "Hank," he screamed before the cart even stopped. "What the hell are you doing?" I looked over at him real calm, while one of my cows chewed flowers beside the fence. "Using my land." No, this is intentional destruction of private property." I pointed toward the pasture. "Private property's over there. Y'all built your pool on mine, remember?" His face turned the color of uncooked steak. "You need to remove these animals immediately." "Why?" "Because residents are terrified." Right on cue, one old cow named Dorothy sneezed directly into the pool. I folded my arms. "Looks like she's enjoying herself." Todd stepped closer, lowering his voice like he was trying not to explode publicly. "You think this is funny?" "No," I said quietly. "I think it's educational." Todd looked at me like he genuinely couldn't decide whether to sue me or swing at me. His whole face was twitching with that tight little corporate anger people get when the world stops following their script. "You've made your point," he snapped. I shook my head. "No, Todd, you made mine." Behind him, one of the Briar Ridge residents was trying to shoo a 2,000-pound steer away from the kiddie section using a pool towel, which was about as effective as negotiating with a tornado. Kids were crying. Somebody was filming on their phone, and Dorothy had somehow wandered halfway into the shallow and looking happier than I'd ever seen her. By sunset, videos from the pool were already all over Facebook. Cow takes over HOA pool. Texas rancher fights back. Suburban neighborhood invaded by cattle. The internet ate it alive. And once local news stations got hold of the drone footage, things escalated fast. 2 days later, Channel 8 News pulled a van right up outside my ranch gate. Young reporter in cowboy boots, so clean, they still had store creases asking me questions, while a cameraman zoomed dramatically toward cows standing beside floating pool toys. "Hank," she asked, "did you intentionally release livestock into the community pool area?" I remember looking straight into the camera and saying, "Ma'am, I simply allowed my cattle access to their own property." That clip spread everywhere. Meanwhile, Briar Ridge was melting down from the inside. Residents started demanding answers at HOA meetings. Turns out the board never got a final land survey approved before construction started. One contractor admitted Todd had pushed them to move quickly before county review delayed the summer opening. Another resident leaked emails showing the HOA had been trying for over a year to pressure me into selling that exact pasture. Suddenly, the story wasn't crazy rancher ruins pool. It became wealthy subdivision tries to bully local landowner. And in a town like ours, that mattered. People around here may argue over politics, football, religion, hell, even brisket recipes. But they do not like land theft, especially from families that have worked the same soil for generations. Earl filed the lawsuit that Friday morning. Trespassing, unauthorized development, property damage, illegal utility installation. By Monday, Briar Ridge's legal team was calling nonstop, trying to settle quietly. That's when things got really interesting. See, Todd finally came back out to the ranch alone one evening about a week later. No Mercedes this time. No golf cart. Just him standing on my porch at sunset looking 10 years older than before. I poured us both coffee without saying much. For a while we just sat there listening to cicadas buzzing through the heat. Then finally he sighed. The board's blaming me. Well, I said, seems fair. He rubbed his eyes hard. You have any idea what this is costing us? I took a slow sip. Probably less than it's costing me to look at that ugly pool every morning. That actually made him laugh a little despite himself. First honest sound I'd heard from the man. Then his expression turned serious again. They're talking about dissolving the HOA entirely, he admitted quietly. Residents are furious. Property values are dropping. People are threatening lawsuits against each other now. And right there, for just a second, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Because underneath all the arrogance and polished smiles, Todd had made the same mistake a lot of people make nowadays. He thought money erased consequences. Thought enough paperwork and confidence could force reality to cooperate. But land doesn't work that way, especially in Texas. So what happens now? He asked finally. I leaned back in the porch chair and looked out toward the pasture where floodlights from the pool glowed against the dark fields. Truth is, Earl had already told me I could probably force complete demolition. Tear everything out. Restore the grazing land. Maybe even win enough damages to bury Briar Ridge financially. And for a few days, I wanted to. I thought about my father every time I saw that concrete sitting on our land. Thought about my mother's ashes beneath that oak tree nearby. Thought about how violated the whole thing felt. But then something strange happened. One evening I drove past the pool after most of the media circus died down, and I noticed a handful of neighborhood kids sitting beside the water quietly eating popsicles while their parents talked nearby. No screaming. No entitlement. Just families trying to enjoy summer. And I realized something. The adults created the mess. The kids didn't. So I made Todd an offer. Next morning, he came back with two lawyers looking nervous enough to sweat through their collars, and I handed them a simple lease agreement. $10,000 a month. Automatic annual increases. All maintenance liability on them. And one missed payment would terminate usage rights immediately. Todd stared at the number for a long time. You're serious? Dead serious. That's highway robbery. I shrugged. No, Todd. Highway robbery is building a resort on somebody else's ranch. One of the lawyers actually snorted, trying not to laugh. The HOA board fought it for 3 straight days, but they didn't have many options left. Demolition alone would and oppose. VE cost a fortune, not counting lawsuits from angry residents who'd already paid dues toward the project. So eventually, they signed. And that should probably be the end of the story. But funny thing is, it isn't. Because every summer now, families from Briar Ridge still swim out there on my land. Sometimes I drive past slow in my truck and watch kids laughing off the diving board while their parents avoid eye contact with me like I'm some kind of folk legend they accidentally created. And every single month, right on time, a check arrives in my mailbox. $10,000. Miguel likes calling it cow-funded passive income. Even funnier, Todd Mercer resigned from the HOA 6 months later and moved to Arizona. Last I heard, he's selling luxury condos somewhere outside Phoenix, which honestly feels dangerous for public safety. Now look, some folks around town still think I went too far. They say humiliating the neighborhood publicly was unnecessary. That maybe I should have handled it quietly through lawyers from the beginning. Maybe they're right, but I'll tell you this much. If I'd quietly rolled over, those people would have learned absolutely nothing. Instead, every single resident in Briar Ridge now understands one very simple rule. Before you build something, make damn sure the land belongs to you. And if it doesn't, well, my cows are still thirsty. So now I want to ask you something. If somebody built on your family's land without permission, would you have handled it differently? Or do you think the HOA got exactly what they deserved? Let me know down in the comments, because around here, people still argue about this story every time it gets brought up at the diner.